Hi, everybody. It's Lindsay Baker with Rescue Stories. Today, I have Brittany Michelson back with me with her new book, Voices for Animal Liberation. And in addition, I have Dani Rukin, who is a fellow JaneUnChained contributor, host, and kick-ass, oh, am I allowed to say that? Kick-ass activist for animal rights. And also Brittany Peet, attorney for PETA. Actually, Brittany is the Deputy General Counsel for Captive Animal Law Enforcement. And I am so pleased to have you here, ladies. Thank you for coming on. Brittany Michelson, I would like to know, I've been reading your book. In fact, I have it bookmarked with all these questions, a couple little questions. I'm going to give you ladies lots of time to talk, but I have some questions marked off. But first, Brittany, my first question for you is, why did you think it was really important to write this book, as you say in the book? Tell us why.
I decided to put this book together because, for a few reasons, there are so many powerful stories in the animal rights movement, different paths, different awakenings, different experiences, backgrounds, perspectives. And I thought it would be a great idea to put together a compilation of stories written by different animal rights activists that are doing different things within the movement. And I believe in the power of writing as a really important way to help create change. We need music, films, writing, visual art. We need all angles for our message to be heard. And so this book was to help get the message out there for animals in a book form, in an anthology.
Yeah, I have a couple of quotes from the book I wanted to ask you about. So let me just dig in here for a moment. Oh, I thought I had that page. You said that from the beginning, you felt different from your peers. You had this persistent anxiety. Now, was this before you got into animal rights, or were you already, was this anxiety coming from animal sensitivity to animals, flight, and so forth? I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, well, I basically have dealt with anxiety in one form or another since I was a kid. And so in my piece in the book, I write about how when I was a senior in high school, my brother showed me a PETA video of a cow in a meat producing facility that was hung upside down and being kicked repeatedly by a worker with a heavy boot. And my brother had gone vegetarian. He was 2 years younger. And that video, that PETA video, was shocking to me. I was a high school senior. And so that was my awakening to what was happening to animals, at least in the meat industry, animals that were being raised for meat. And so I went vegetarian shortly after. And but what I meant about anxiety was that, you know, at the time as a senior in high school, I was sort of trying to grapple with this new knowledge of where meat came from. But I was also dealing with like the pressures of adolescent, you know, social stuff and maintaining, you know, high grade point average and playing varsity sports year round. And so there, you know, there was a lot of pressure. And so I just sort of write about how I came to give up meat and then, you know, later became vegan. So I was writing about my path and how anxiety played a role.
Yeah, and you said here, becoming vegan was one of the best decisions I ever made for two reasons. It was the first moment that I started living in true alignment with my values, as I am against animal abuse, against destruction of the environment, against damaging human health. Second, becoming vegan led me to animal rights activism, which has gifted me with a focus and motivation that is greater than myself. So what did you mean by that? Greater than yourself? I thought that was really interesting.
Well, since I became an animal rights activist, I guess I've realized that, you know, no matter what struggles I've gone through at different points in time, it really does pale in comparison to the unimaginable horror that animals are going through at every moment of every day. Like, even if I'm having, you know, a bad day and I'm stressed out about things, I'm not confined in a dark building in a tiny cage. So it just, it woke me up to being of service to the suffering, being of service to the vulnerable and the innocent, and to our planet. And it's helped alleviate anxiety in a way, even though when I became aware of all the horrors going on with animals, it's anxiety provoking because it's so overwhelming. But at the same time, because I'm making a difference and I'm trying to do my part to help these suffering individuals, it in a way, it helps alleviate anxiety because I know that I'm part of the solution, and I'm helping to create a solution rather than participating in the problem.
Brittany
So
Peet,
it's sort of an interesting dichotomy, but it's...
Yeah. I was just going to ask Brittany Peet to comment on that, how being an activist and attorney for animals, how that has helped you deal with animal cruelty and so forth.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it cuts both ways, and this is one of the things that I talk about in the essay that I contributed to the book. It's so easy to get discouraged, and one of the things that we always say in our legal department, when we need to buck ourselves up, is you lose, and then sometimes you lose and lose and lose and lose and lose, and then you win. And the culture of animal abuse and cruelty is so ingrained in our culture that it can be really difficult to get wins in this field, especially when we're dealing with ridiculously archaic animal laws and law enforcement that have no interest in enforcing the laws, and district attorneys who have no interest in prosecuting animal crimes. It can be incredibly frustrating when we're the only ones who are trying to get these, what little animal law that we currently have on the books enforced. And I work specifically trying to help animals who are held captive in roadside zoos and who are used for entertainment. And we've been making huge strides for those animals just in the past 10 years that I've been working in this field. I think we're on the brink of completely ending the tiger cub photo op industry, which is huge, and it's something that I wouldn't have even imagined a few years ago. So, to me, I think that when we're experiencing those losses, which is often, I'm fueled not only by the wins that we've had, but also by some of the animals that we weren't able to save in time, and trying to use their memory to work a little bit harder, or to come up with that next creative idea that, whether it's legal or not, that can help us save the animal that we're trying to save right now.
On the story about Joe, you mentioned how hard the roadside zoo fought, even right at the end when they had agreed to keep blocking you at every turn. Why do you think they did that? Was that just spite because they were losing, or was there other motives involved?
There's so much spite and hate. I mean, ultimately, people who confine wild animals for entertainment, they want to control another being, and there's just so much narcissism there, and a lot of it, I think, is spite. And one of the refrains that we hear so commonly from people who keep wild animals captive is I love them and I treat them like family. And we invariably hear that from every person we're trying to save animals from. And that was the case with Joe too. But as I say in my essay in the book, their last gift to Joe was more cruelty. They had one job as part of this rescue, which was to show up, veterinarian show up, and to not have fed Joe for the past 24 hours.
Right.
Because in order for a chimpanzee to be to be moved because they're incredibly dangerous. They have to be sedated. And if you have a full stomach while you're on sedation drugs, you can vomit. And if a sedated animal vomits, it can aspirate and they can die. There's a real risk of that. And the Mobile Zoo in Alabama, which was the roadside zoo where Joe was confined in solitary confinement for years and years and years in a tiny cage where he had absolutely no stimulation, and members of the public threw food at him. They fed him. And shortly after he started to wake up, he started vomiting. And this is when we were already on the road to the sanctuary. And thankfully, we had an amazing chimpanzee veterinarian on the road with us. And he was fine. But I
have the video. Let's show the video. I have the whole story. Great. Let me just show it. I'll start.
Joe was imprisoned here in this squalid cage at this decrepit roadside zoo for 17 years. When he was young, he was taught to perform tricks by notorious Hollywood animal trainers who has a long history of dumping chimpanzees in roadside zoos when they grow up and get too strong to be controlled. And that's what happened to Joe. He was dumped here at the Mobile Zoo, where he was confined to a tiny, rusted cage, isolated and alone.
I find it incredible that they said they loved him. By the way, we cut out the name and we don't want to mention any names of anybody and try to stay real general if you could, please. So, but yeah, so that was just incredible to me when I saw that where he was living and what you just said about how they said to you that they loved them. Do you want to comment on that any further?
It's something that we hear invariably in these cases. There's a case that I always think of when I'm talking about that. Another chimpanzee named Iris, who was also held in solitary confinement at a roadside zoo, and she was held inside in, I don't even call it an enclosure. It was more like a closet with absolutely no light. She was fed like a prisoner on a tray that was slid underneath the door. When she was finally rescued and arrived at sanctuary, her eyes, she had to be held in darkness in the sanctuary so that her eyes could adjust to seeing light.
Wow.
She was incredibly pale and almost bald from having not experienced the sun in so long. And the first thing that her captors said to the rescue team that showed up was, I bet you're impressed with how well she's treated.
Oh my God.
There's just a complete disconnect of these people. They truly think, at least some of them, that they're providing these animals with excellent homes.
Let's watch the next.
At the sanctuary, he will soon have the opportunity to learn to be part of a family and will finally have enough space to climb and explore like a real chimpanzee. Joe is the 6th formerly solitary chimpanzee retired to save the chimps by PETA. All previous arrivals are now thriving in social groups with other chimpanzees. This is Joe's life now, and we won't stop until every chimpanzee who is isolated and alone gets to experience the freedom that they all deserve.
You know, I played them in the wrong order.
At the sanctuary, he will soon have the opportunity to learn to be part of a family and will finally have enough space to climb and explore like a real chimpanzee. Joe is the 6th formerly solitary chimpanzee retired to save the chimps by PETA. All previous arrivals are now thriving in social groups with other chimpanzees. This is Joe's life now, And we won't stop until every chimpanzee who is isolated and
I think I made a little mistake there, but I know one thing. You had him meet Jane. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Go ahead, take it. Yes, thank you. And could you? And I actually had footage of that, so I messed up. I'm sorry, but can you just explain that, how that all worked out?
Yeah, so no rescue ever goes to plan, and so we always have to be ready to think on our feet. And our videographer and I were planning to just fly from Alabama to the sanctuary in Florida to meet Joe and the transport team after we got him out of Alabama. But the morning that we were going to rescue Joe, we found out that Jane Goodall was actually going to be speaking in Tampa, Florida that night. So the sanctuary director at the time knew someone who works with Jane Goodall and called her and said, we're going to be coming through Tampa with a rescued chimpanzee. Would you like to meet him? And she jumped at the opportunity. So we had to reconfigure our plans, and instead of taking a quick flight from Alabama to Florida, we took a 10-hour drive instead so that we could document Joe and Jane Goodall meeting. And it was just a beautiful thing to see. She's such a great chimpanzee communicator, and he clearly knew that he had a kindred spirit when they met.
Yeah, I know. I'm so disappointed I don't have the footage, because it showed them and showed her communicating with him. But anyway, I'm going to touch on a little bit with Dani. I'm going to come back to you in a little bit. But Dani, I was really taken by your, first of all, the headline, How I Made the Connection, Gay Rights, Feminism, and Animal Liberation. And then the quote, human beings see oppression vividly when they're the victims. Otherwise, they victimize blindly without a thought. And that's Isaac Bashevis Singer, I believe is his name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about how you came to write this, and, your experience and so forth, writing this chapter in the book, and what inspired it.
Yeah. Well, I think when I came out, as gay like decades ago, and then 4 years ago, I came out as vegan. And I think coming out as vegan I came out as gay like in the 70s, and coming out as vegan in 2016 was in some ways harder. But there was a lot of similarities, and some of the things that I wrote in the book were, don't flaunt it. I can't remember anything these days, but there's certain things that I got. If I can find it, I'll read it. But it was basically where I was at a gathering of all women who were gay, and those people of all, I felt like, let me see if I have it here. Yeah. Okay. So here's what I got: amongst a bunch of lesbians who, are environmentalists and LGBTQ and against racism and sexism and homophobia and xenophobia and for the environment. And yet, when I just wanted to share about my vegan journey, I got some of the usual. I got, I love your passion, but can you please not talk about it? Heard that as when I was coming out as gay. There's a fine line between passion and fanaticism. These are actual quotes. And then I had one of them said, you no longer need to discuss this topic with me. This is your passion, and you'll find your tribe to reach the goals you envision. And this was after I just had a casual, what's a casual conversation with a vegan animal rights activist, right? But I just had, I was mentioning about what happens to the cows, and Brittany Michelson and I, we talk about this a lot, which is, for feminists, do you understand what has to happen to the cows in order for us to take their milk? We are the only species that steals the milk, drinks, and steals the milk of another species. That means milk, cheese, butter, yogurt, all that. That all comes from cows or sheep or goats. It's the same process. We forcefully impregnate them. We're not, waiting for these cows and sheep and goats to make sweet love in the pasture in order for us to, exploit their bodies. And then we exploit their reproductive system in order to, take the milk that was meant for their calf. And we do that. And as we know, it's bad for our health. It destroys the environment, and it's horrific for the animals. And so when I just tried to have that conversation, it just was not received. And that's when it was just another level of, I will never stop being their voice.
Yes. I was just putting up a link, Brittany Peet, for the PETA thing. So I wasn't not paying attention, Dani, but that's an amazing, and I really liked how you said that you always felt, like your family, they had this thing about when you came out as being gay, as like they had this superiority, and that later you felt that that was part of how you made the connection, because you were eating meat and scoffing, not scoffing, but your girlfriend was a vegan, and you thought, and then a friend was, and then she went back to eating meat, and you were so happy because it was so much easier to go out and eat. So you're really like a completely different person, but that made you make that connection, that attitude of superiority, which we all know human superiority has, really been responsible for a lot of what's happened, the tragedies.
That's so true. Exactly. And that the belief that anyone is more superior to anyone else is how we justify doing the things that we do to others. And when we realize the injustice of the inequality, the only way we can exploit another and abuse and oppress and violate another is when we think they are not equal, that they're inferior, that they're somehow meant to be here for us. Like the mindset that the earth is ours to just do what we want with the rivers and the mountains and the land. And it's like, no, not true. The trees, we need the trees for oxygen, yet we're clear cutting and deforesting for animal agriculture. And we're encroaching on the wildlife, as we know, because of what we've done to animals is the reason that we have this pandemic going on, as well as other previous, it's all caused from using animals in ways they are not meant to be used. So we're not just hurting. And I think the main thrust of veganism also that you would agree is that it's the idea that what we do to others, we're doing to ourselves.
Right.
To ourselves. There's no separation. So, and in terms of the gay, the veganism, coming out as gay and coming out as vegan, yes, there was the heteronormative. You see hetero everywhere. You see it on the billboards, making out. You see them having sex on TV, on sitcoms, movies. Everything is male, female, male, female, male, female. The minute we had our first lesbian kiss, I don't know if it was on Roseanne or something, it was like a peck. It was like a big buildup. There's going to be a lesbian kiss, on TV. And I think it was like a 2-second peck on the cheek and somebody, on the lips, and the hair was black. I was like, are you kidding? So translated to vegans, and the minute, we see the broiled steaks on the billboards everywhere, and everybody's eating, barbecues, and then they tell us, can you not force your lifestyle in our face?
Yeah. Hang on a second. Wild. Is everyone getting a really bad feedback, or is it just me? Yeah, we're getting real. I don't know if we should go off and come back on. I don't know if
let's not. I mean, it's up to you. It's your call.
Okay. I think it's okay.
Is it okay? Okay. Anybody else want to comment on that? Brittany Peet, you want to comment on what she was saying about normalizations? I mean, that's a big thing for me, but you go ahead.
I guess what I was going to comment on is how similar my journey seems to have been to Dani's. And it's interesting because I don't often hear people with a similar journey to mine. In the movie, we so often hear about people who, when they were small children and their parents took them to the circus, they immediately demanded to leave because they could see the pain in the elephant's eyes, and they refused to eat meat at 5, and that was not me. My parents took me to SeaWorld and the circus, and I didn't see anything wrong with it as a kid. And I was a smug omnivore. I was a very smug omnivore, and I came to vegetarianism because of that smugness. I was in a senior sociology class, and I was writing my senior paper about basically how being vegetarian was silly. But around the same time, I adopted my first dog named Wesley, and I learned through him. And at the same time, I was researching and learning about slaughterhouses and how meat production works and how animals are treated on feedlots. And at the same time, I was realizing for the first time that animals are individuals and they have personalities and they care about things. And so it was through all of that that a smug omnivore became a vegan PETA animal rights lawyer.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Brittany Michelson, what do you say when people say to you, well, yeah, of course, people are, more important than animals. Would you, what would you like, why don't you care about children? I mean, you seem to care about animals as much as you do children. People are superior. What do you say to someone with that kind of mindset? Not exactly those words, but that mindset.
Yeah. Well, I generally will mention that all forms of oppression are connected at the root, and I would probably introduce them to the concept of speciesism and draw links between racism and sexism and homophobia and speciesism, and just try to educate people and help them connect the dots. As a teacher, I'm definitely faced with multiple opportunities to present the concept of speciesism with young people, with my students. And I do think it's important the way that we approach people in an educating manner. And just, I think people appreciate when they can connect the dots, like we present little bits of information, but then they sort of come to their own conclusion about why hurting animals is wrong. And if they are consuming animals, they're supporting an industry that is torturing and killing them. Right. So, I think that it's important the way that we have these discussions. And I definitely am really grateful for the opportunity that I have with kids to be able to introduce them to animal rights and veganism.
I have a question for all of you to answer after I show the footage of Dani at the Toronto Pig Save. But the question is, do you think it's okay what age should children start to see things?
I've seen this several times before, and it never gets easier. The horrific conditions they're in after living agonizing lives, they're about to go into a gruesome death. The meat industry and the dairy industry are interconnected, and what you're seeing here is suffering, and suffering is suffering. Cruelty is cruelty. Violence is violence. If we're against violence, against humans, against anybody, if we're against cruelty, if we're against suffering, if we're against oppression, then everybody should be against this. Because when you see, how do you separate this kind of cruelty and a horrific treatment of a sentient being from any other sentient being? Whether it's a dog or a pig or a child or a chicken or a shark or a fish, there is no difference.
Okay.
I've seen this several times.
Sorry. Brittany Peet, would you please address, I have one clip, I'm going to have you each address one. So Brittany Peet, I saw you shaking your head. Would you tell me what you were feeling when you watched this first clip?
It never gets easier. No matter how much horrific investigation footage or firsthand suffering you see, it never gets easier watching these complex, intelligent beings in the moments before their deaths, their needless deaths. So it's hard to watch.
Yeah, but important, right? To go and witness this.
it's incredibly important, and I feel so grateful not to be part of the system that contributes to that suffering, and moreover to be part of the movement that's trying to put an end to it. I'm so grateful for everyone who's putting this content out into the world.
Let's watch another one.
We met on Facebook, and she was, and Shirley was seeing my posts. We met here today. What are the odds? See, this is the beauty of the movement. She said she spent so many years eating them, the least she could do was to come and take a look and look into the eyes of the animals that she ate for so many years. It's called Meet Your Meat. And I feel the same way. I didn't bear witness right away. I first became, active. I saw the Toronto Pig Save people, and I thought I could never, ever do that, ever. And then one day I was in Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles Animal Save was happening for the pigs. And I said, you know what? I can do this tonight.
So Brittany Michelson, would you comment on that clip, please?
Yeah, so bearing witness is definitely a really powerful form of activism. I think it's something that a lot of activists don't do right away because it is difficult, very difficult to see the animals in the slaughter trucks before they're about to enter a facility to be gassed to death, to have their throats slit. So, I mean, it's something that I had to sort of get up my courage, and I had to sort of wrap my mind around the whole thing before I went to my first vigil. But once I did, I realized the impact that going there has on people in our circles, family and friends, and people on social media. When you share the images, the video footage of these animals and the looks on their faces and the conditions that they're in, it really changes a lot of hearts and minds. I've had so many people reach out to me on Facebook messages, people that I'm connected to through work, etc., asking me about this concept of bearing witness and wanting to, being curious to learn more. And so it's so important, bearing witness. And I think there's a lot of powerful change that comes from it.
Yeah, let's watch the third clip.
I can do this, and I didn't force myself, but I did have to step out of my comfort zone. I wanted to see with my own eyes what the reality was of what they looked like, because I'd seen many videos, but to actually see them and touch them, there's something very different. So I do encourage people to get out of your comfort zone. You don't have to do it alone. You're not alone. The Save movement is in over 150 cities and areas, and it's growing. So find one nearby you, and if you don't have one, you can reach out to Toronto Pig Save and learn how to start one. But you're not alone. You don't have to go through this alone.
Hopefully we can hear you without static. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Sounds good so far.
Yeah. You know what I want to say is that at that time I said there were over 150 Save movement chapters, and now there's over 1,000, I think, animal Save chapters. But the Save movement has Animal Save and has Climate Save, has Health Save, and the Save movement, co-founded by Anita Kreitz, is completely intersectional and very much about bringing it all together. So it's a very powerful movement.
Yeah. So I do have a kind of little fun video, and Brittany, I wanted you to touch on this a little bit, because we talked about maybe, talking about animals that are sold, small animals that are sold in pet stores and so forth, and things like turtles and, mice and rats, etc. And you actually recently rescued a box turtle, right? And I have a little video, so let's show that. It's kind of... So tell us a little bit about the story about how you obtained this little fellow or lady, and also like about the setup, like this whole thing you built. Tell us about that a little bit. I actually have a couple of photos, which I'll show while you do.
All right. Yeah. So somebody from the vegan community reached out because I already have 3 rescue tortoises. And so they told me the story of this box turtle who had been living in a tiny tank for 25 years. And, you know, I can't stand, like, that literally makes me cringe when I think about animals being in small spaces and not being able to explore and not being outside. Turtles and tortoises do not belong in tanks. A lot of people think, oh, they're like rocks, you know, they just can sit in a tank. They need to move around. They need space. They love to explore. They need the real sun. The real sun is best for their shells, and they belong outside. And so I adopted this box turtle, and I created a spacious outdoor enclosure for her that also is predator proof. It has a mesh wire cover for nighttime, and she's really happy. And I can't even imagine that she was in a tiny tank for 25 years. It's unfathomable.
Wow, that looks pretty big. How big is that exactly? I mean, long. It looks so long. How many feet long is it? You probably might have said it already.
Yeah, it's like 7.5 feet, 7.5 feet long by about 3 feet wide.
And so, did you know? Go ahead.
Yeah, just compared to the tank she was living in was 1 foot by 2.5 feet.
Wow.
So now she's 7.5 feet by 3 feet. Or so.
She moved into a mansion.
Yeah, and she gets to live outside instead of inside. So
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people wonder what they can do. Maybe they can't adopt a dog or a cat, but there's so many other animals in the shelters, like turtles. And if you you can have the time to take care of them, or the facilities. You know, it's a lot of times people don't even think of it. Maybe I can adopt a rat or a bunny or something. I think it's great. You know, small animals need homes too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there's a big issue with the pet industry, so many issues within the pet industry. For example, you know, the pet stores are selling this idea that, oh, you can get a small tank and you can have a turtle in the tank. And it's just, there's so many issues with pet stores and the pet industry that I feel our movement needs to address more. But, you know, we're tackling so many different issues, so many different types of injustice against animals. So, it's, you know, it's hard to tackle it all. But
yeah, I guess each of you ladies have your own area that it's near and dear to your heart. Maybe we could each address that. Brittany Peet, you work with live captive animals, getting them rescued. So tell us a little bit about, you know, your passion for that, if you would.
Yeah, it's really an interesting and exciting area of the movement and definitely of the law. And for anyone who has seen Tiger King, the Netflix docuseries, you know, those are the cases that I work on. I appeared in Tiger King, and I worked on. I'm working on cases against all of the animal abusers who appear in that. You know, so, and I love my job in particular because while I am a lawyer and I'm, you know, working on legal cases and helping our litigation team come up with creative legal theories to help animals, there's also a big advocacy role in my job. And so it's great to be able to use all of those different skills. And what I love about the captive wildlife issue is it's what we call a gateway issue into the movement. And we've been able to bring so many people into learning more about PETA and about veganism and about exotic skins and so many other animal rights issues, you know, from being concerned about a bear who was being abused at a roadside zoo in their town and reaching out to PETA and getting involved with it. they're able to make the connection after seeing, and understanding that a bear in a barren, tiny cage is suffering. And then, they come to us and they join PETA's Facebook group and get on the mailing list, and they learn about all of these other issues. And we've been able to make so many new vegan animal rights activists that way.
I want to mention, we want people to go to PETA.org. I'm going to just put that in right now. And you can learn about all sorts of campaigns. While I'm typing this in, please tell them what they can find there.
Absolutely.
They go to the site.
Yes, go to PETA.org. One of the big issues that we're working on right now is trying to end the big cat cub petting business across the United States. It fuels an incredible amount of cruelty. And as we've already talked about with the dairy industry, the cubs who are used for this industry are stolen from their mothers shortly after they're born. In the wild, they would stay with their mothers for 2 years. They're deprived of their mother's care, of their protection, and they're forced into encounters with the public at a time when they don't even have a fully developed immune system yet. So there's a huge mortality rate with these cubs. It fuels a lifetime of cruelty, neglect, and death. And these cubs can only be used for a few months before they're discarded and the cycle of cruelty continues.
Where do they wind up? They wind up in these roadside zoos? Is that normally what happens? Or
there are a number of different places that these cubs end up. A lot of them end up in roadside zoos and in tiny cramped cages. A lot of them are sold as pets, and we'll find them in basements or in tiny backyard cages. A lot of them are used as the cycle continues, and they're used as breeding machines themselves. And one of the things that I learned after starting to talk to some of the people in this industry is that a lot of them are simply killed once they're a few months old. They've outlived their financial usefulness to these people, and they're simply a liability. And so they have a system where they're able to forge paperwork and make it seem like the cubs never existed in the first place.
Wow. That is just incredible. I wanted to show some of your activism now, Brittany Michelson. You have some pictures here, so I'll just go through them and you can talk about them. This one here, you speak out. Oops, can't hear you.
Yeah, this was at, I get the conferences mixed up, but one of the animal liberation conferences. And this was an action that we did to advocate for Rose's Law. Mm-hmm. And that's Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, which also owns Whole Foods.
Right.
Now. So calling him out for.
Yeah, we want to name people and Whole Foods, if we could just, maybe I shouldn't have shown that one, but just tell us generally about what the law is about. Can you do that?
Rose's Law is an animal bill of rights that Direct Action Everywhere is working on, and it's called Rose's Law because there was a chicken named Rose that was allowed to live. There were, I think, 9 chickens that activists in the Bay Area tried to remove from a factory farm. They were enduring extensive suffering, and so activists went on to the premises to remove chickens, and the authorities came and they took the chickens out of the activists' arms and they euthanized them. And they allowed, one of the officers allowed the activists to take Rose, they named her Rose, and take her to a sanctuary. Yeah. But anyway, this Bill of Rights is named in her honor. And the first step in the Animal Bill of Rights is to establish the right to rescue animals from distress and from, conditions in which they're suffering, whether, not just dogs and cats, but chickens, pigs, and all animals. So
Yeah, because the law doesn't put them in the same category as
Right.
they're considered property.
right.
Let's look at another one here. What is this one here?
I was doing a speak out at one of the conferences, one of the animal liberation conferences at the big march in San Francisco.
Nice. And let's see what else I've got here.
I just wanted to add, oh, sorry. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say about Rose's Law, and Brittany, thank you for that, is the right to rescue is the first step, but before that is also the right to know. And as Brittany Michelson knows, there's two Brittany's here, Direct Action Everywhere established the right to know and then the right to rescue, because when you try to find out from any of these places, where did your dairy come from? They'll say it's natural. They'll have pictures of cows, happy cows. But when you try to dig deeper and find out where these happy cows are, you can never find out. And so the right to know. So there was a lot of real work for that. And of course, then it led to the right to rescue. And there's been so much work on all of it. It's really inspiring and really powerful.
Yeah.
I do want to say that we invite the representatives of Amazon and Jeff Bezos on at any time. And thank you for that, Dani. And Dani, by the way, I have a couple more pictures of, in fact, you guys, this is the same subject, both people, the elephants, the Asian elephants, or can you tell me, Brittany, where you were in this picture? Because I know there's there are elephants in Asia, and where else?
Yeah, so I volunteered twice at Elephant Nature Park, a sanctuary in Thailand. That rescues elephants from abusive situations in the trekking industry, the logging industry, street begging, circus, different forms of elephant exploitation. They rescue elephants and provide them sanctuary. And this is Save Elephant Foundation in Lek. The founder is one of the contributors in my book. I know her personally, and I volunteered there twice. And they also rescue, they have tons of rescue animals. They have dogs, 400 dogs, cats, cows, bunnies.
I'll have to have them on.
they take them all in. So
that'd be great. Yeah. And Dani, I know you had a story about the elephants as well. And it's just very interesting because my last show I did with Save the Asian Elephants. And, here are some pictures of elephants as it should be. This is from their website. And then this is the incredible cruelty and the baby, the torture they go through, the breaking of the spirit. And Dani, I was just going to ask if you wanted to comment about the elephants and that whole issue.
Yeah, and oftentimes while the mother elephant is looking on and she's chained and she can't do anything, it's horrific. So as I like to say, elephants were my gateway animal into veganism, and my story is elephants. So when I realized there was actually one particular elephant, and that's how Brittany Michelson and I met. We met through this campaign to free Kavan the elephant, who has been chained on and off for over 30 years at a zoo in Islamabad, and who is now, it looks like it's 100% that this elephant is being freed due to Cher, the celebrity Cher's involvement. And we actually on JaneUnChained, on the Animal Hour, I interviewed Mark, who is partnered with Cher and with Free the Wild, co-founding Free the Wild together. When Cher saw the tweets, because we were doing so many things to try to get more influential people to know about it. And eventually, and with Anika, she's been a key element in this. So the end of this story might actually have an unbelievably happy ending. And Cher might even be involved in the celebration of Kavan being freed. But Kavan, like you were saying, Brittany Peet, that sometimes it's other animals that get us to see. I actually, that's my big part of my story, is how an elephant got me to go vegan. And when I was tested, so as I got deeper into, the rights of, they're so altruistic, they're so intelligent, they're so amazing creatures, and what we were doing to them, I realized I couldn't live with myself. And it was also through PETA, as I started looking into it more and more around the cruelty against elephants, then I started seeing footage, mostly PETA footage, about what else we were doing. And I always knew that PETA was, you know, amazing. And it's what I understood is why we don't wear fur. Which, by the way, I'm one of the co-founders and co-organizers of Fur Free PDX. We're trying to get fur banned in actually Portland, but also the larger county and really Oregon. So things have been kind of put on hold because it's the last thing people want to talk about right now is animals, while there's other things going on. But in any case, this elephant, I just wanted to say that when I was testifying on behalf of the elephants in Oregon, and getting them freed from the zoo. And what's part of my story is that while testifying for the emancipation of the elephants, I realized I was building a case for my own veganism. How could I justify everything I was so passionate about against elephant abuse? It literally could be translated. And I thought, wow, that was my aha moment.
Wow,
And
that's
it's
incredible.
The smallest thing I know. And the smallest thing anyone can do to make the greatest difference is to do that. And I want to also say one other quick thing. Oh,
Quickly,
I have a
because
Facebook
we only
page.
have a few minutes left, so go ahead.
Yeah. Women and Girls Against the Abuse of Elephants is a Facebook page for people to come together. But I want to read this less than 1 minute, because it's been timed millisecond, poem that I wrote about what happened with COVID and animals, the reason, what we do to animals being the reason. The only reason I'm going to read this is because I think people will appreciate it. But the main reason is because it's my bookmarker in my Voices for Animal Liberation. So I saw it and I thought, I can't do this and not read it. So, and as a result of reading this to Jane many months ago, Jane was like, I love it. Let's do something. So I came up with a vegan poetry jam, and we did that in April. We got lots of people to write poems about animal rights and veganism and all that. So I just want to read it because I think it's important, because
Okay,
they're the
hurry
most
up,
vulnerable.
Dani, read.
Yeah, all right. I think okay. Animals in crates helplessly clinging to life meet a gruesome fate. Italians singing alone and together, balconies and windows ablaze, spirits intact. Toilet paper sales skyrocket as the market plunges. We cancel everything except for our indiscriminate and unrelenting slaughter of the most vulnerable among us and call it food. Mad cows, swine fever, bird flu, SARS, MERS, COVID-19, zoonotic diseases of the human heart, feeding only our self-serving narrative that's it's the cycle of life. Tell that to the victims straight to their face. We bury and burn them alive and call it culling. We say they're contaminated and exterminate them, exterminating only our humanity. We plunder Mother Earth and take her for all she's worth, yet she holds the key to our existence.
Wow, that's really moving. Beautiful. Amanda Peet, can you just,
Brittany.
sorry, I did it. I told you I was going to do it, and I did it. Can you believe it?
It was inevitable.
Because
It happened.
Dani knocked me off with that incredible poem. She just took my mind away. But go ahead, please, Brittany. Brittany Peet, last words. We have about, 7 minutes left.
I think that I just want to remind everyone that it's so important to never give up and to not let yourself get discouraged. And no matter whether you came into this movement and saw the light as a 5-year-old or as a 70-year-old, it matters, and it was the right time for you. So, and definitely pick up Brittany's book, Voices for Animal Liberation. There are such wonderful stories that are inspiring and that inspire me and will inspire you to come up with new ways to get active for animals.
And yes, and also go to PETA.org. And there's a lot of different, you said there's a lot of different things that you can do, action that you can take there.
Yes,
so
go to
people can learn
PETA.org.
that.
Follow all of PETA, follow PETA on all of the various social media channels. I can't keep up with them anymore, to learn about all of the different actions that you can take. And there's so much amazing content on PETA social media that you can share with all of your followers to inspire them to go vegan and get active for animals too.
Yeah. And how many, just one last question for you. How many of those, sideshow zoos are still in existence, and how hard do you think that's going to be to completely obliterate?
Yeah, unfortunately, there are still hundreds of roadside zoos that are operating across the country in the United States. Once we are able to knock out the big cat cub petting industry, a lot of them are going to die out because it's the only way that they're able to sustain their businesses. And I think one of the really positive signs that we're seeing is there aren't new roadside zoos opening. So this is a dying industry, and we are doing everything that we can to hasten its demise.
And people can help out by donating. Just you said, even as little as $3 would help a lot if people would donate, as well as take action. Digital activism works great. So yeah, we hope everybody will take away from this show today those ideas, to take some action for these poor animals. Brittany Michelson, we have just a few minutes left here, like 3 minutes left. And I wanted to give you the last little bit of time to tell us whatever you would like about your book. And, I think your book is a great form of activism. I'm reading it myself right now, and the stories are incredible. The people you got, I'd love to have you on again with some more of your other people that your contributors, because you picked, as these ladies are some of the creme de la creme, so to speak, of people that have done such great things for animals. So, and you ladies, of course, are all included in that group. So go ahead, Brittany.
Yeah,
well, use up all your time.
Thank you to Brittany and Dani, both for their powerful and important stories, and for being on today on the show. But yeah, one thing about my book that I really feel is very powerful is the variety of the stories, the different types of activism, the different focus areas. There's a piece in here about animal testing and vivisection, and then Brittany Peet's piece about captive animals. And there's really a variety, and that's what I wanted for the book, was to have a variety of voices, perspectives, types of activism, etc. And so here's the book again, and it's available online on multiple sites. The publisher is Skyhorse Publishing, and it's available on their website and Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, Simon & Schuster, the list goes on. And the foreword is by Ingrid Newkirk, which was a huge honor to be able to have her write the foreword. And so yeah, I just thank you to everybody for their support. Thank you to these two amazing women who wrote incredible pieces in the book. I'm so honored and so thankful for everybody's participation.
And thank you, ladies.
Lindsay, I want to say one thing. Thank you, Brittany Michelson. Another place that people can get this book is also, amongst all the places Brittany mentioned, is also, if you want to support Black-owned and Black women-owned businesses, you can get this at Elizabeth's Bookshop online, Elizabeth's Bookshop, and we will put the link to that. And she sells it, and it's Black-owned and Black women-owned. So support our sisters and brothers.
Thank you, Dani. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this has been a great show, ladies. I'd love to have you all on again another time. It's been wonderful having you. The stories are so heartwarming, Brittany. And like I said, I can't wait to study this book. All these activists have so much to share and offer. And it also, for me, it's great because it gives me ammunition. So these people are so much more eloquent than I am, and it just helps me build my ammunition to go out there and speak out for the animals. So thank you all for being on, folks. I'll be back next Tuesday at 10. Dani, when is your show?
Saturdays at 4.
All right.
Thank you. And thank you, Lindsay. I love your show, and thank you so much for having us on. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, ladies, for being here. We'll see you next time, folks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.